The late October rain fell in steady sheets across Oregon's coastal highway 101, turning the asphalt into a glistening black ribbon that wound through the towering Douglas firs. Marine Staff Sergeant James Cooper guided his weathered Ford F-150 around yet another bend, his windshield wipers fighting a losing battle against the persistent Pacific Northwest downpour. He was 3 hours into his drive from Seattle to his new home in Portland, where he hoped to finally put down roots after 15 years of military service. The dashboard clock read 4:47 p.m., but the heavy cloud cover made it feel much later. The rain had been his constant companion since crossing into Oregon, and the forecast promised no relief until morning. As the fuel gauge dipped below a quarter tank, Cooper spotted a sign through the gray curtain of rain: Whales Head Rest Stop, next exit. The rest stop emerged from the misty coastline like something from an Edward Hopper painting, a wood-sided building with large windows glowing warmly against the gathering gloom. Its parking lot was surprisingly full for a weekday afternoon, a collection of vehicles ranging from mud-splattered pickup trucks to gleaming SUVs huddled together against the weather. Cooper pulled into an empty spot near the entrance, killing the engine but remaining in the truck for a moment to watch the scene before him. His years of military service had ingrained in him a habit of observation that he couldn't and didn't want to shake. The rest stop's main building housed what appeared to be a small cafe, its windows fogged from the warmth inside battling the coastal chill. A few travelers hurried between their vehicles and the building, collars turned up against the rain. As he stepped out of his truck, the wind whipped his jacket around him, carrying the scent of salt and pine. The sound of the surf pounding against the rocky coastline below provided a constant backdrop to the patter of rain on asphalt. Cooper adjusted his baseball cap, a plain navy blue one that had replaced his military cover, and made his way toward the building. The bell above the door chimed softly as he entered, and the aroma of coffee and fresh-baked pie embraced him like a warm blanket. The cafe portion of the rest stop was larger than he'd expected, with a counter running along one wall and about a dozen booths spread throughout the space. Local artwork depicting coastal scenes hung on the wood-paneled walls, and fishing nets draped with colorful glass floats decorated the ceiling. A handful of travelers occupied various booths, a couple of truck drivers nursing coffee at the counter, an elderly couple sharing what looked like berry pie, and a family with 2 young children trying to contain their energy after too many hours in the car. But it was the scene in the corner booth that caught Cooper's attention and made his combat-honed instincts bristle. A young black girl, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, sat across from a white man in his 50s. She wore a bright yellow raincoat that seemed to swallow her small frame, her braided hair adorned with colorful beads that caught the light when she moved. The man wore an expensive-looking gray suit that seemed out of place in the casual setting. His attention focused on a MacBook Pro open before him. Something about the tableau felt wrong to Cooper, though he couldn't immediately pinpoint why. The girl's posture was rigid, her shoulders hunched as if trying to make herself invisible. Her eyes darted around the room, never settling, never relaxing. The man's attention appeared focused on his laptop, but Cooper noticed how his gaze would periodically shift to the girl, watching her with an intensity that seemed predatory rather than protective. Cooper approached the counter, where a waitress in her 60s with a name tag reading Martha greeted him with a warm smile. "Welcome to Whales Head. Can I get you something to warm up?" "Coffee, black," Cooper replied, choosing a seat at the counter that gave him a clear view of both the corner booth and the exit. As Martha poured his coffee, he noticed her own gaze flicking toward the odd pair in the corner. "Anything else?" "Honey?" she asked, her voice pitched low. "Been worried about that little girl myself. They've been here almost 2 hours, and something just ain't right." Cooper nodded almost imperceptibly, grateful for the confirmation of his suspicions. "How so?" Martha leaned closer, her weathered face creased with concern. "Well, she asked to use the bathroom earlier, and he insisted on standing right outside the door. When another customer tried to go in, he got real aggressive about it. Plus," she glanced over at the pair, "I heard her call him sir, not dad." Not uncle, just sir. And when I tried to make conversation, asked if they were enjoying their trip up the coast, he shut me down real quick. Cooper sipped his coffee, his mind processing the information. In his military career, he'd learned to trust his instincts, and right now, every one of them was telling him something was very wrong with this situation. He pulled out his phone, careful to keep it below counter level, and opened his web browser. As he watched, the girl's hand moved in what appeared to be a deliberate pattern. His breath caught as he recognized it, the universal hand signal for domestic violence that had gone viral on social media. Palm out, thumb tucked, fingers folded down. It was quick, subtle, but unmistakable. The man must have noticed something because he suddenly closed his laptop with a sharp snap. "Time to go, Anna," he said, his voice carrying across the quiet cafe. The girl flinched at the name as if it were unfamiliar. Cooper's decision was made in that instant. As the man stood, reaching for the girl's arm, Cooper rose as well. His movement was casual but purposeful, years of training evident in every step. He positioned himself between them and the door, pulling out his phone while maintaining eye contact with the man. "Excuse me, sir." Cooper's voice was firm but neutral. "Mind if I ask where you're headed?" The man's face flickered with annoyance before settling into a practiced smile. "That's really none of your business. Come on, Anna." The girl trembled, her eyes meeting Cooper's for a brief moment. In that glance, he saw pure terror. "Actually," Cooper said, his phone now visible in his hand, showing the 911 dial screen. "I think it is my business. Oregon State Police are already on their way, and we're all going to wait right here until they arrive." The man's facade cracked, rage seeping through. "This is ridiculous. She's my daughter." "Then you won't mind waiting to explain that to the police," Cooper replied, noting how the girl had taken a small step away from the man at the word daughter. The next few minutes were tense. The man attempted to leave twice, each time finding Cooper firmly in his path. Martha had quietly asked the other patrons to move toward the kitchen area, and she'd locked the cafe's front door. The rain continued to drum against the windows, creating an ominous soundtrack to the standoff. When the police cruisers arrived, their lights painting the foggy windows in alternating red and blue, the man made one final desperate move. He lunged forward, attempting to grab the girl, but Cooper was faster. In one fluid motion, he stepped between them, his military training evident in his precise movements. 2 Oregon State police officers entered swiftly, quickly taking control of the situation. As they separated the man and the girl for questioning, the truth began to emerge. Her real name wasn't Anna, it was Sophia Martinez, and she had been reported missing from her school in Salem 3 days ago. The man, identified as David Thorne, was wanted in connection with several other attempted abductions along the West Coast. As Sophia sat wrapped in a blanket provided by Martha, Cooper learned the full story from the officers. Thorne had been tracking her for weeks, learning her schedule, waiting for the perfect moment. He had posed as a school administrator, claiming Sophia's mother had been in an accident. His plan had been to take her to Canada, adding her to a tragic list of children who disappear across borders, often never to be found. Hours passed at the rest stop as state and federal authorities arrived. The rain outside had finally begun to ease, but inside, the emotional storm was still building. Detective Sarah Chun from the Oregon State Police's Major Crimes Unit took the lead on interviewing Sophia, her gentle approach slowly helping the terrified girl open up. "He said my mom was hurt," Sophia whispered, her small hands clutching the warm cup of hot chocolate Martha had made her. "He showed me a badge and everything. It looked real." Her voice trembled. "He said we had to hurry to the hospital in Portland, but then we started driving the other way." Cooper, who had been asked to stay as a material witness, felt his jaw clench as he listened from nearby. He'd seen similar tactics used by insurgents in war zones, using people's trust and compassion against them. but seeing it employed against a child on American soil made his blood boil. Detective Chen's voice remained steady and compassionate. "You were very brave. Sophia, can you tell me about the hand signal you used? Where did you learn that?" A flicker of pride crossed Sophia's face. "My teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, showed us. She does safety lessons every month. She said sometimes when you're scared, you can't yell for help, but there are other ways to let people know you need help." Her eyes found Cooper. "I didn't know if anyone would understand, but I had to try." The detective smiled warmly. "Your teacher was very wise, and you were very smart to remember that. You helped us catch a very bad man who won't be able to hurt any other children now." As the interview continued, Cooper learned more about David Thorne from the federal agents who had arrived. He was wanted in connection with 3 other attempted abductions in California and Washington. Each time, he had used similar tactics, posing as an authority figure, targeting children from diverse backgrounds, and attempting to transport them north. The agents believed he was part of a larger trafficking network, but until now, they'd never been able to catch him in the act. Around 8 p.m., a commotion at the entrance announced the arrival of Sophia's parents. Elena and Miguel Martinez burst through the door, their faces etched with worry and hope. The moment Sophia saw them, she leaped from her chair, the blanket falling away as she ran into their embrace. "Mi amor, mi pequeña." Elena sobbed, gathering her daughter close. Miguel wrapped his arms around both of them, tears streaming down his face. The raw emotion of the reunion brought tears to the eyes of everyone in the room, even the hardened federal agents. After the initial rush of emotion, Elena and Miguel approached Cooper, their gratitude overwhelming. "How can we ever thank you?" Elena asked, still holding Sophia's hand tightly. "If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't noticed." Cooper shook his head. "Your daughter saved herself," he said firmly. "She was brave enough to signal for help, smart enough to stay calm. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time." Miguel gripped Cooper's hand with both of his own. "No, señor. You chose to act when others might have looked away. You are our guardian angel." The investigation continued late into the night. Cooper provided his statement multiple times to local police, state authorities, and finally to FBI agents. He described every detail he could remember, from his initial observations to the final confrontation. Around midnight, as the last of the authorities were finishing their work, Martha approached Cooper with a fresh cup of coffee. "You know," she said, settling into the booth across from him, "I've worked here for 23 years, seen all sorts come through: tourists, truckers, families on vacation. You learn to read people." She paused, stirring her own coffee. "I knew something wasn't right with that man, but I didn't know what to do. Thank God you did." Cooper studied the older woman's face, seeing the guilt there. "You did do something," he assured her. "You noticed. You paid attention. You confirmed my own suspicions. In situations like this, it's often a series of small actions that add up to save a life." As the night wore on, the Martinez family prepared to head home to Salem. Before they left, Sophia approached Cooper one last time. She had changed out of the yellow raincoat into a warm sweater her parents had brought. The beads in her hair clicked softly as she moved. "Thank you," she said simply, then surprised him with a quick hug before running back to her parents. Cooper watched them leave, feeling both exhausted and oddly energized. His planned drive to Portland would have to wait until morning, but he couldn't regret the delay. As he helped Martha clean up the cafe, she had insisted on staying open through the whole ordeal. He reflected on the strange turns life could take. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, the storm having blown itself out overnight. Cooper resumed his journey to Portland, but the events at Whales Head Rest Stop weren't over. They were just beginning to unfold in ways he couldn't have imagined. The media coverage began within days. Local Oregon newspapers picked up the story first, followed by national outlets. Headlines ranged from "Marine's Instincts Save Child" to "Rest Stop Hero Thwarts Trafficking Attempt." Cooper avoided the interviews as much as possible, uncomfortable with the attention, but the story spread nonetheless. The investigation into David Thorne revealed a disturbing pattern that stretched beyond Oregon's borders. FBI agents discovered connections to a sophisticated trafficking network operating along the entire West Coast. Thorne had been a key player, responsible for identifying and abducting vulnerable children. His laptop, seized at the rest stop, provided authorities with crucial evidence. 2 weeks after the incident, Cooper received an unexpected call from Elena Martinez. "We're having a family dinner this Sunday," she said, her accent wrapping warmly around the words. "We would be honored if you would join us." Cooper found himself driving to Salem that weekend, following directions to a modest but well-kept house in a quiet neighborhood. The Martinez home buzzed with energy and life. Extended family members filled the rooms, all eager to meet the man who had helped save Sofia. Miguel's mother, an elderly woman everyone called Abuela, pulled Cooper into a tight hug the moment he entered. "God sent you to that rest stop," she declared, pressing a plate of homemade tamales into his hands. "Now you are family." Throughout the evening, Cooper observed Sofia with her family. The terrified girl from the rest stop had been replaced by a different child, one who laughed, played with her cousins, and moved through the house with confidence. But he also noticed small signs of lingering trauma. How she tensed when the doorbell rang, how she kept her back to walls, how she checked for exits in each room. During dinner, Elena shared more about the day Sofia had disappeared. "When the school called to verify the emergency contact, I was in a meeting. By the time they realized something was wrong, they were already gone." Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. "The police told us that most children who are taken across borders are never found. But she was found," Miguel interjected firmly, reaching for his wife's hand. "Because she was strong and smart, and because good people chose to help." After dinner, as families with young children began to leave, Sofia asked if she could show Cooper something. She led him to her room, where a large poster board stood propped against her desk. "It's for my school presentation," she explained, "about safety and speaking up." The poster was covered with pictures and information about safety signals, emergency contacts, and trust networks. In the center, Sofia had written in careful letters, "Your voice matters, even when it's silent." "Ms. Rodriguez, my teacher who taught us the signals, she asked if I would help teach other kids." Sofia said proudly, "Dad's going to come too, to talk about making emergency plans with your family." Cooper felt a swell of emotion as he looked at the poster. "This is really important work. Sofia, you're going to help a lot of people." That night marked the beginning of a deeper connection between Cooper and the Martinez family. Sunday dinners became a regular tradition, and he found himself slowly opening up about his own experiences, the weight of military service, the challenges of transitioning to civilian life, the importance of trusting one's instincts. 3 months after the incident, Cooper attended Thorne's preliminary hearing. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and he faced multiple federal charges. But the real impact of the case reached far beyond one criminal's prosecution. The Oregon State Legislature began working on new safety measures for schools and public spaces. The hand signal that had saved Sofia became part of standard safety training in schools across the state. Martha's Rest Stop became a model for staff training in recognizing and responding to suspicious situations. Cooper found his own life changing in unexpected ways. His background in military security and his role in Sofia's rescue led to consulting work with organizations focused on child safety and trafficking prevention. He developed training programs that combined his combat experience with civilian protection strategies. One rainy afternoon, almost 6 months after the rescue, Cooper returned to Whales Head Rest Stop. Martha was still there, greeting him with a warm hug and her signature coffee. The cafe looked much the same, but something had changed. On one wall, alongside the coastal artwork, hung a small plaque dedicated to those who choose to act rather than look away. "Your vigilance keeps our community safe." The plaque at Whales Head Rest Stop became just the beginning of a larger movement. As Cooper sat with Martha that rainy afternoon, she shared how the incident had transformed her small corner of the world. "Truckers talk, you know," she said, refilling his coffee cup. "Word spread up and down the coast about what happened here. Now they all keep an eye out, especially for kids who might be in trouble." Last month, one of our regulars helped identify a missing teenager from California. The cafe had become more than just a rest stop. It was a sanctuary of sorts. Martha and her staff had received formal training in recognizing signs of trafficking and abuse. They'd established protocols for safely reporting suspicious situations. Other rest stops along Highway 101 began implementing similar programs. Back in Salem, Sophia's recovery continued to inspire others. Her school presentation had evolved into a regular program, with her and Miguel visiting schools throughout Oregon to share their story and teach safety awareness. The once terrified girl had found her voice, using her experience to protect others. "Sometimes the scariest part is feeling alone," Sophia told a group of middle school students during one presentation. "But you're never really alone. There are people watching out for you, even strangers. You just have to be brave enough to signal them." Elena had channeled her gratitude and determination into action as well. She established the Guardians Watch Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to preventing child trafficking and supporting survivors. Cooper served on the board, helping to develop training programs and safety protocols. 1 year after the incident, the foundation organized a ceremony at Whales Head Rest Stop. Local officials, law enforcement representatives, and community members gathered to unveil a new safety center integrated into the rest stop facility. The center provided resources for travelers, training for staff, and a safe space for anyone seeking help. During the ceremony, FBI Special Agent Diana Wong shared some surprising statistics. Since the incident here last year, reports of suspicious activity at rest stops in Oregon have increased by 300%. More importantly, these reports have led to 15 successful interventions in potential trafficking situations. This is the power of an aware and engaged community. Cooper, standing at the back of the crowd as usual, felt a tug on his jacket. It was Sophia, now 11 and carrying herself with growing confidence. "They want you to say something," she said, taking his hand. "Please." Reluctantly, Cooper approached the podium. Public speaking had never been his forte. He preferred action to words. But looking out at the faces before him, he found his voice. "A year ago, I stopped here for coffee during a rainy drive. I had no intention of getting involved in anything. But sometimes, life puts us in positions where we have to make a choice to act or to look away. What I've learned since then is that heroism isn't about being fearless or powerful. It's about being willing to trust your instincts and take action, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient." He paused, making eye contact with Sophia and her family. The real heroes are the ones who face their fears every day. The child who signals for help. The parent who turns tragedy into positive change. The community members who choose to get involved rather than mind their own business. We're all guardians of each other's safety, whether we wear a uniform or not. The impact of that day at Whales Head continued to ripple outward. The Guardians Watch Foundation expanded its reach, establishing training programs and safety networks along major highways throughout the Pacific Northwest. Other states began implementing similar initiatives, creating a web of vigilance that made trafficking operations increasingly difficult. David Thorne's trial led to the dismantling of a major trafficking network. His cooperation with authorities, though self-serving, helped rescue dozens of children and led to multiple arrests. The evidence recovered from his laptop exposed vulnerabilities in school security protocols, leading to nationwide reforms in how schools verify emergency contacts and release students. Martha's Rest Stop Cafe became a legend among travelers. Truckers would go out of their way to stop there, knowing they'd find not just good coffee, but a community dedicated to keeping the highways safe. The wall behind the counter, once sparsely decorated with local art, now displayed a collection of thank you letters from families reunited with their loved ones thanks to alert staff and customers. 2 years after the rescue, Cooper sat in the Martinez family backyard during another Sunday dinner. The Oregon summer evening was warm, filled with the sound of children playing and adults chatting. Sophia, now 12, was teaching her younger cousins the safety signals she once used to save herself. Elena joined Cooper at the picnic table, watching her daughter with pride. "You know," she said softly, "that day at the rest stop changed so many lives. Not just Sophia's, but countless others we'll never even know about." Cooper nodded, thinking about all the changes he'd witnessed. His own life had transformed in ways he never expected. The skills he'd honed in combat now served a different purpose, protecting the vulnerable and teaching others to do the same. The nightmares of war had been replaced by a sense of purpose he hadn't felt since leaving the Marines. "Life has a way of putting us where we need to be," he replied, accepting a plate of Elena's famous enchiladas. "Even if we don't realize it at the time." The sun set over Salem, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. In the gathering dusk, fireflies began to dance nature's own signal lights. Cooper watched Sophia chase them with her cousins, her laughter carrying across the yard. The scared girl from the rest stop was still there, but she had grown into something stronger, a survivor who used her experience to light the way for others. Along Highway 101, Whales Head Rest Stop still stands as a beacon for travelers. Its lights shine through the coastal fog, offering more than just a place to rest. They offer hope, safety, and a reminder that, in our darkest moments, help can come from unexpected places. The plaque on the wall continues to inspire, reminding everyone who passes through that sometimes the greatest acts of courage begin with simply choosing to pay attention. Every day, up and down the Oregon coast and beyond, people make that choice to notice, to act, to help. They may never make headlines or receive recognition, but they carry forward the lesson learned on that rainy afternoon, that we are all guardians of each other's safety, and that sometimes the smallest actions can save a life.